Hi everyone. I'm so excited to have Ms. Madhvi Pethe with us today. As you know, she was principal of ML Dhanuka College in Mumbai for a long time. She's now the CEO of Rachna Sansad, which runs several educational institutes of architecture, applied art, fine arts, crafts, lots of streams actually. And she is active in corporate world as well. She's independent director of Renaissance Global Limited. She's an accomplished academician. She has presented and published research papers in several international journals and conferences. Her area of specialization, of course, is human resource management, and she's a recognized PhD guide at University of Mumbai. And I'm so happy to have you with us, ma'am, today. And we are talking at a time when educational institutes are very much shut. Although education is not, colleges are conducting lectures and sessions online, and we'll discuss a whole lot with her. Hopefully, we are talking at a time when places like Mumbai metropolitan region, Pune are still very much dealing with the outbreak of coronavirus, and we'll discuss all of this and all the associated issues with her. I think we'll begin with this examination issue because there has been a debate raging, especially with politicians getting involved, government getting involved, and everyone weighing in on this issue. Should there be exams? How should students be promoted to next year? So, how do you see this situation, ma'am?
Personally, I'm of the opinion that, try and understand this is an unprecedented situation, first and foremost, obviously, as we all know. Second, most important is in the given scenario, I don't personally think that there is anything called as the best decision. See, what is decision? Ultimately, is the best possible alternative. There's nothing like undebated, unanimous, one fine solution to a particular problem. So whenever a government or the concerned authorities decide to take a particular decision as it relates to examinations, there's always going to be a pro and con. So we need to weigh and then finally decide probably this is the best possible alternative. Now, in this consideration of best possible alternative, personally, I have a couple of points to suggest. First and foremost, I don't think government needs to intervene in this particular matter unless it's absolutely necessary. Rather, the prudent system of the UGC or the various other authorities, plus the Chancellor of University, Vice Chancellor of University, and the colleges otherwise, in case if they fail to perform their duties or to take a prudent decision, probably then it will be as a last option that the government should intervene in the matter. Second most important thing, obviously, whatever we decide should be in the best possible interest of the students. Now, it's easy said than done, because what is best possible for the students is always going to be a contradictory issue. So, what I feel is, instead of one central body deciding on whether there should be exams, whether the previous year should be it should be let go ahead without any exams and only for finals they should be examined, so on. I personally am of the opinion that it should be left to the concerned bodies. Instead of one UGC taking a centralized decision, or maybe AICT or whoever is the authority, instead of that, if they leave it to the governing bodies, except for naturally those exams which are held at a national level. So other than that, if they could leave to the bodies, not talking about, say, Chartered Accountants Institute of India. Naturally, the decision has to go just not across India, but could be even the other centers outside India. But if it's a decision for a BCom or BSc or B or such kind of graduation programs, where we have the universities and the governor as a chancellor of the university, I think in consultation with the governor, the university can understand its own demography much better of the student's profile. And based on that, they could be left to take a call. Say, for example, there could be some programs which could be very high profile or high skilled programs. And for that, those programs, there could be fewer numbers in comparison to probably the mass programs. Alone, Mumbai University hosts around 1 lakh plus students. Under such situations, it should be left to the university, is what my opinion.
I understand. So the University Grants Commission, of course, has come out with a set of recommendations, and they have proposed that probably universities can skip first and second year examination, but not the final year exams. Final year students should face exams. I was wondering if there is a rationale behind it. Why single out final year students? Do you see any rationale in this proposal?
Well, to an extent, yes, because in majority of the programs, the first year and the second year or the initial years, exams are conducted at a college level, many a times. And naturally, if they are conducted at a college level, then there is going to be a difference at the levels of the students' performance as well as their results. So to bring that uniformity, because the university provides with a common degree to all its students, it's always better to have at least a few papers held at a university level on a common platform where the students can be assessed at a common level.
Right.
That could be one of the reasons.
Right. So I have a broad question, ma'am. With the introduction of semester pattern of examinations along with practical tests and grade point scoring, it seems that we are moving in a direction of continuous comprehensive evaluation. But it seems that we are still stuck on examination. We are still in large part dependent on examinations. Why is that so? Why is examination still such a big issue?
I'm personally of the opinion it's only or probably sheer numbers is what matters. See, continuous understanding of the students, understanding their learning abilities and valuing them or assessing them on the same basis, it's one of the best possible alternatives that a person can be judged on. However, considering the demography of India, to repeat, in a place like, say, even if you take an example of a place like Mumbai, where a class is having say around 120 plus students in a class in one division I'm talking about, and naturally one teacher assessing 120 of them. Rather, I've been a principal of a commerce college, and we used to have teachers assessing nothing less than 600 to 800,000 papers. It's next to impossible, humanly impossible, for a teacher to continuously go on assessing the very best of the students in these large numbers. So when the student-teacher ratio is not so conducive, it's extremely tough to depend on this continuous assessment program.
Right.
I feel so.
So it then naturally brings us to the next question of this pupil-teacher ratio that we have and how it has been worsening over the years, and how in a way government has steadily but slowly been withdrawing itself from the educational sphere, be it by freezing recruitment or limiting the funds to institutes, or maybe encouraging private universities to be set up by relaxing the norms that we have, be it faculty norms or infrastructure norms. Do you think that we would have been in a better position to handle this crisis if we had a much better a robust public education system than the current system that we have?
Well, pros and cons, as I said, plus and minus in both the systems. In the long run, probably I feel that PPE model would work. PPP, public, private, and partnership. Government partnership. So that could always be the best possible model. However, in India, still people are not up to that standard of understanding that education is something which really, really needs to be extremely qualitative. So it shouldn't matter. As of now, there is a rush to higher education by almost everybody. Could be for various reasons, could be for economic reasons also, could be because we have a in large number a young population. India is called a young country. So if there is no employment, people tend to continue with their education to advance themselves, etc. Whatever these reasons could be, what is happening in this our scenario of education is we have mass education system. This is my favorite statement, this is mine one. We have a mass education system, but we don't have education for masses.
Right. No, I get
To
it.
explain you it, if you get it. Since we have a mass education system, we make students learn what we feel is right for them on a mass scale. Whereas, personally, I feel in this country of mass population, understanding the needs of the students should be a priority, based on which, right from schooling, the education needs to be totally changed. And I would say it's not the existing platform which is going to make any difference to the system, but we need to totally change the right at a school level, so that by the time a student takes up his 10th or 12th, he actually either knows whether he or she wishes to proceed in a particular line.
Right.
As of now, it's still a herd mentality. When this entire base itself to me is somewhere wrong, it's very tough right now to say whether the public schooling system would have been better to control the today's scenario, or the private system is also good at times and autonomy needs to be given, and so on. However, in the given scenario, since we can't, unless there is a political will to change this entire thing, in the given scenario, even the autonomy or colleges which are with autonomous status can really play wonders and miracles.
Right.
They need to really strengthen their syllabus with the kind of autonomy that they are getting. The whole purpose of giving an autonomous status to the individual institutions is that they need not wait for those typical vicious cycles to turn around, or to follow that lethargy in the bureaucratic systems.
Right.
But they can take charge of their own system. They can design what they wish is right for the students, make them well enter the world or the national economy. I wouldn't say just the employable market, because we don't want to produce, in this today's government vision, we don't want to just produce the graduates or the learned staff who will be wanting to look for high salaried jobs, but they want to create job makers.
Right.
So that can also work very well. If there are private institutions, obviously there is a cost to it, and that cost can come up with a public-private partnership.
I see. I understand that, in a country like India, there can't be one-stop shop formula. And as you pointed out, that probably, PPP model is the best. But I suppose, things like pupil-teacher ratio, I suppose that should be non-negotiable, right? Even if it is, private institute or a public institute.
Sorry. Actually, I agree with this. However, considering the present economics, it may not be feasible and possible also. So what I say is always that there should be some programs which could be exclusively designed for the places or for those category of students who wish to, or who can really get the focused attention, and they can play wonders, or they can really be miraculously different I wouldn't say brilliant, because brilliance is once again a very, and I don't want to measure it in terms of the ones who is a scientist or a mathematician alone is a brilliant stuff or something. But there could be programs which could only focus on the crowd which wants to excel in a particular area, and they have a potential to do so, right? Now, over there, that student-teacher ratio must be restricted, because only then you can produce a very high quality pedigree out of whatever you're looking at. Right. However, there could be certain programs which could be of a general nature, where a teacher is probably capable of catering to the requirements of masses, and then it's okay even if the student-teacher ratio is still not as bad as probably 1:120, but little less than that, I would say.
Right. Let's then talk about online teaching learning, because it has a potential of really reaching out to masses, and most of the institutes have taken to online and digital mode of teaching during the lockdown, by compulsion. Do you think that it's an effective method?
Again, not as a diplomatic answer. However, yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, yes, in the sense that
I mean, if we, I mean, talking about the state we are in, and talking about the institutes that we have, do you think that it's an effective method?
I would go a step ahead to say, why just look at the present situation and then think of the best possible alternative? We can always look at online education as the future, irrespective of COVID-19. So what I would say is, if online education gets supplemented with the college personal presence required education, that would wonderfully play miracles in a sense. Say, for example, the typical lecturing system that is happening as of now in majority of the colleges, where a teacher comes to a class, delivers a lecture to n numbers, and then hardly gets an opportunity to pay personal attention to them. Now, these sessions, these lectures can very well be pre-recorded, and they can be uploaded, and every student may have an access to it. And this goes absolutely boundaryless. So with that concept, I feel online education can really play a very important role.
Ma'am, my only worry is that, probably, after COVID-19, there would be, this rush towards online education, which is, as you have pointed out, which has lots of benefits to it. But the only problem is, what we have seen with, online, let's say, scholarship for that matter. Where large parts of state and even the country don't really have access to internet, at least fast internet, and in a way they are sort of left behind. So how do we ensure that that doesn't happen?
Well, here is where we definitely will require the private companies to develop or put in a good network facilities. We have lots of private sector companies also spending a lot through their CSR funds on education, wanting to, if at all a government is able to loop in these industries and see to it that a very strong base of networking is provided for or created to reach out all those underprivileged areas as well, then the advantages of going for online education is boundaryless, for the simple reason that, one, online education is something that you can have at a mental peace also. All those who really need to earn money, earn and learn, they get that benefit of finding out time at their leisure and watching those lectures at their mental comfort zone whenever they are in that mental comfort zone, and learn better. And secondly, with the load of colleges, the students gathering only for the purpose of lectures in the colleges would be transferred to this online learning, then it's more practical and creative, and true learning can happen within the premises. So, they're complementary. They're not substitute to each other. Only when we accept this, then probably we can think ahead of times. Long ahead of COVID-19, as I said.
Yeah.
Right now, people are looking at online as substitute to offline, to the classroom education,
Right.
which to me is an extremely wrong concept. They must go hand in hand. And see, like we always say, that human gets only 24 hours a day. If you can multiply those 24 hours within 24 hours, then you are ahead of times.
Right. Right.
And that's what exactly the online education can do. When the student comes to the college, is probably much more prepared, much more advanced. Well, that's certainly a challenge to a professor also,
Yeah.
to be ahead of times, to learn and to depart much more than probably what they may be doing all the time.
Right.
But
Right.
that's a wonderful exercise, you know. And to an extent, maybe keeping aside the basic science where 2 plus 2 might remain 4 all the time, but there is always advancement in majority of the fields, including science.
Right. Right.
To evolve a student who is much more into learning, what can be a better or an interesting thing for a teacher than that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the thing is, man, looking at the current situation of pandemic and lockdown, as an educator, when do you think that, educational institutes in the state would be in a position, especially higher education institutes, to start physical classes?
Well, I have always been
I know
talking in
it's
two different
probably
levels,
premature.
probably. No. What I'm saying is there could be a one level at this level, which talks of when physically the classes would start off somewhere, like you want me to say, maybe by month of August or September or October, and whether we'll be able to complete the academic session by, even if we start that late after June, and nobody knows whether it's going to be October also,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
could be a right and so on. However, my other level of thinking is, as I just mentioned a while ago, when are we actually going to start true education?
No,
Well,
absolutely, I understand. I mean,
for
we
which
were
we
just
learn
talking about in
this,
a very idealistic frame of reference, and suddenly, I posed a very
it's not
practical
just
question.
what I felt is these 3 months of COVID-19 have given us such wonderful time to think very differently. Sitting back at home instead of being just negative or getting bored,
Yeah.
it gave me a lot of time to think very differently. So I just thought that if at all of us start realizing that we could make some wonderful material, and through this material, if we can double our efforts of reaching out students with very good informative and knowledgeable stuff, by which in the process everybody enriches himself or herself, and
Right.
that could be the real time where the education would start off. I
Right,
personally
right.
feel.
So even if colleges don't allow much time for physical classes in this semester, we would be in a position to really ensure that we are in a position to impart the necessary knowledge to students, even if physical classes are not held in this particular semester.
Well, to answer your question on a lighter note, there are so many students who do not attend any sessions otherwise
Yeah,
throughout the
true that,
year in
and I
school.
think there is a flip side to it as well,
No.
because no, I'll tell you because
That's not what my view is.
sometimes it's so happening that colleges are bombarding students with whatever webinar or whatever seminar is being held in their college. They are bombarding all the students with them, and students can't really seem to be able to decide which and which webinar to attend and which webinar not to attend. So I think there is
I
a
have a
flip side
different
to this
observation.
online teaching
The
too.
Here is where I have a slightly different observation. Obviously they are students, they are at that age. You and me were also at that age
Yeah,
long ago, though I
yeah,
was, you are
yeah,
still young. but I was long ago is that age. And I still remember when I was 18, I was 19, I was 20. I don't think I was so serious about my studies and my career and my future as much as, I'm blaming this today's generation students. Nothing like. They're all the same across generations. And there is always just 1% number of students who are absolutely focused on what they are doing and what they wish to do. Besides, point is not that, because our entire system is so exam oriented. The first question that you asked me, do you really think we should such a big hue and cry of the examinations being held? However, because our system is so exam oriented, that what we actually learn through these webinars or probably the seminars which are even held for the students at their level, which are more practical, which are more realistic, relevant, because all the time at the back of their mind is this what's going to help me write my examinations and score marks? If no, I'm not interested in right now. It could be, I don't want to debate on that, whether it's a right or a wrong attitude as of now. However, the point is, your first question, whether do you really think, do I really think whether we'll be able to make it up with the delayed starting? Well, yes, we still can, because majority of the colleges have already started their online sessions, and with this all web facilities that are available nowadays, the lectures can be easily recorded. They can be shared with the students and sent across wherever the child or the student is right now. And irrespective of the net availability, as and when they get an access, they can still hear out those sessions. So probably the theory part can be covered up to a great extent with these online sessions. Now, once, even if that is well taken care of, I wouldn't say that would happen 100%. Well, because along with the theory, you need as well simultaneously, which the students probably wouldn't get. But they can always see those visual models along with the online lectures to get a perception of what that whole concept is all about. And later, when they join physically the college, it's very easy to say that colleges should run in batches throughout the day to make 3-4 sessions in, instead of 120 at a time, have 30, so 4 shifts and so on, because Mumbai colleges are already running in 24 shifts, 24/7 shift. Many of them I'm absolutely aware of, because I know how tight I used to be on the timetable for every classroom at every point of time. Somebody would be there to grab that particular classroom in case if there was a free session. So it's very tough for the colleges to run it into the shifts. However, even if they can break down and try to arrange for or squeeze in some space or some ways by which they can make some kind of, days or even for the students, or make some 2-3 batches and invite them only for practical learning. Because then the workload in the college premises would still be less, because the majority part as against the theory would be covered through online sessions. If so, we can always fight back the situation and it can be made good, because India, as we all know, we have very good, in positive sense, fighting spirits. We have sustained and survived so many such calamities before. And this is I don't know if I'm permitted to say so, but it's majority who are saying that it's a human-made calamity. It's not a natural, whatever. Let us not go into those debates. But we can always fight back in this situation as well. And we can make the things good. Not an issue.
To complete this conversation, I suppose the last question would be, what lessons must be drawn from this experience, and what preparations must be done by colleges, universities, and government authorities to handle such situations more effectively. I mean, God forbid, if such situation arises in future, how can things be handled differently?
One thing is, I'm finding even Indian people quite disciplined, I would say. There are always going to be some people who are going to be beyond repairs or whatever notorious category you would call them as. But let's leave them aside. That happens with everybody. I mean, 10 children in a house also, 1 or 2 are always going to be of that category. So it doesn't matter. But at least if remaining 8 people remain more disciplined, we become more hygienically conscious, environmentally conscious, and know how things can really, really go wrong. That would probably teach us a very good lesson of not just running about in this materialistic world, but trying to know yourself and be slow if needed. Cut down on your pace, be humane, but learn what Mother Nature is telling us. That is one. With this, government also has issued from time to time various directives, which majority of the schools and colleges, I'm sure, are going to follow. However, it is more left to us as individuals that we should behave more responsibly in the public places, not just schools or colleges, but every other public place where there is going to be a large gathering year onwards, by God's grace, sometime sooner. That's one. And thirdly, as I said, it's time for education to reveal the whole of its understanding of what we are trying to give to the society. So it's good time for education sector also to think and rethink and virtually rebuild the whole model of education to be more realistic, more user-friendly, instead of a teacher teaching what he knows, and just because he wants to teach what he knows, the syllabus is drafted accordingly. I don't want that to happen anymore for the education sector.
I think on that wonderful note, I think we should wrap up this conversation. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot for taking out time talking to us on this, in this unprecedented situation. But I think, as you have pointed out, it also brings us a lot of opportunities to really rethink the system that we have and also change things going forward. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
I thank you for giving me this opportunity and listening to my probably weird thoughts as well.
No, not at all. Far from it. Far from it.